Right, seems like we are live. Finally,
Awesome.
apologies to everybody who was waiting on the line. We had a little bit of difficulty, technical difficulty. So thanks for bearing with us. So today, unfortunately, Amber was feeling a little bit under the weather, so you have to tolerate me. Um, I have a good friend of mine here. Bunty and I, we didn't really work crazy together, but we made very good friends out of each other in a short period of time that we were both working in the same office at Deloitte in Canada. But I don't want to go into all of that history, that ancient history now. Um, so, Bunty, I'll let you maybe do a quick introduction. We usually ask everybody to give a brief introduction of themselves and the work that they do,
Okay.
maybe their experience and also their background.
Mhm.
And then with that, it would probably be a good segue to get into the meat of the conversation.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. Nice to meet you all virtually. I am Bunty Jethwani. I work as a manager with one of the big four consulting firms in Canada. I am based out of Kitchener, Waterloo area. I have overall 14 years of experience working in IT industry and consulting. My areas of expertise are integration, architecture, and infrastructure. I mainly like oversee or manage these type of projects in my firm. My just a bit of a background. It's my growth has been like organic in IT firm. So I had started as a software engineer. Now I'm working as a project manager, lead large project implementations, primarily focused on healthcare clients in Canada. Right now, we are focused on COVID-related projects, so that's where I spend majority of my time.
Great. So that's a good introduction. I also wanted to mention, so for anybody who's watching us on YouTube, as always, if you're coming back, you can post your additional questions for Bunty. I will try and monitor everything. As I said, today Amber's not here, so it's going to be a bit harder for me to be involved in the conversation and monitor at the same time, but I will check. I have it right in front of me. Also, as always, if you are part of our Slack workspace, you can post anything over there as well. Um, so, why don't we jump right into the big question? How do you define project management? And as I mentioned to you a couple of minutes ago, I was having this conversation with a friend about the difference between project management and product management, and they also recommended another PM, which is process management.
Okay.
Um, for some of our audiences who are maybe a little bit more junior, less experienced, can you please let us know why these terms are not the same? Why do we need a project manager and a product manager, and how they're different from one another in terms of a role, especially if you're
Mhm.
building a product or
Okay.
a product in a data company, such as I don't know, like your Airbnbs of the world. How do you differentiate these roles?
Okay. Okay. I will try to decipher a lot of questions for sure. Let's start with what is project management, right? So there are many definitions. One of my favorite is project management is an application of knowledge, skills, tools and technologies that you apply on the project activities to meet the project requirements within the given project constraints. Right. So let me just explain it a little bit better, right? So you, as a project manager, your role is to apply the project management techniques or tools or the skills that you have, deliver the project within these right timelines with right team within the time with high quality. Right. That's basically project management in simple words. It is basically a well-defined framework that has been provided by PMI. PMI is Project Management Institute, who have created basically a body of knowledge. So for for any project managers, how they should be managing the project, they have a they have basically a detailed body of knowledge which anybody can follow and deliver any project of any size. Let it be small, let it be large. That same body of knowledge can be used to deliver projects in IT, construction, so be it. Whatever. It's not like project management is applied only on IT projects. So that's one definitely like uh, I want you all to understand that project management is not only for IT project management. You can literally apply IT project management on, let's say, if you want to learn swimming, right? You can literally plan how many days you want to go for swimming classes. How how are you going to measure your milestones? How are you going to like which days you are going to register for classes, things like that, right? So it can be applied to anything. So it's really a discipline or a framework that we take to achieve basically the requirements that we want to achieve.
So can
It
I
really
ask a
helps.
follow-up question? So
Sure.
then, does it mean that maybe two questions? So one is in terms of skills that you mentioned. So I will let you
Mhm.
go into more details about that. But then, would you say that if you wanted to put it in a layperson's terms, it would be more time and resource management, or does it include other aspects too?
Uh, I didn't get, sorry, can you come again with your question?
So, when you were talking about the example of applying the same principles for, let's say, learning how to swim, you
Yep,
mentioned what days to take classes and examples like that.
yep.
The question is, then would you, if you were to, put it in layperson's terms, so very,
Mm-hmm.
briefly talking about this, would you say that the majority of what describes project management is um, time and resource management, or does it involve
Okay.
other things too?
Got it. Thank you for repeating it. Yeah, it definitely applies to a lot of other things. I will give you, since we are talking about swimming, right? Let me try to explain a few more other areas. So project management has 10 areas: scope management, resource management, time management, quality management, uh, risk management, stakeholder management, communication management, right? So some of the other areas that will also apply apart from resource and time in this scenario would be risk management, right? You can actually identify ahead what risk that can occur while you are swimming, right? And if certain risk occurs, you can be ready, and you can have, say, for example, if you're going to have if you're trying if you're going to be if you're doing swimming in a very deep sea, right? For example, you want to make sure you have a lifeguard nearby,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you need to plan for things. So risk management is one other area apart from resource and time management. Similarly, there will be stakeholder management, which is also important. You need to engage right people when you are basically planning for any project. Imagine if you are like not engaging the right people, if you are just going all by yourself, not having a lifeguard near you, not having a sorry, excuse me 1 second. Uh, Not having a lifeguard near you, or not having right tools near you, it's going to really cause a lot of risk on the project.
Mm-hmm.
So there are various areas. Project management actually breaks down all these like planning activities into various areas so that you are prepared to like your planning is more proactive rather than reactive,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's a saying in project management in PM work: failing to plan is planning to fail, right? So if you don't plan well, you will definitely fail. You will be more like you will be looking for resources all the time. You will have scope creeps all the time. So it's really important that we have all these processes defined. How are we going to manage scope? How are we going to manage changes? How are we going to manage issues, risks that are occurring on project? We really need a proper process, so because that becomes your box. If there are things happening outside of that, you refer to this guide and tell, no, this is not your, this is your manual basically.
Yeah. And then going back to the skills that you mentioned, so
Arman, I can't hear you, you're on mute.
I'm not. Um, Is it better now?
Still can't hear you.
Any difference? Nope. All right, just give me a sec. Any difference now? Okay. For everybody, yes, I can hear you. For everybody who is on the call, can you guys hear me? If you could put it on in the chat box, it would be great. How about now? No? That's weird. All right, so just want to make sure. Yes, so people can hear me, but Bunty can't hear me anymore. So
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then maybe something wrong with my headphones. Sorry about
Maybe.
that. So sorry.
And my voice is coming to you now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good.
Okay.
Yes, live events. I love these things about live events.
New world.
It just makes everything more exciting, I guess, compared to chats that are pre-organized and just uploaded. I don't know, for some reason I prefer these ones.
Yeah, this is much better.
Yeah, it's
Obviously.
real.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right. So thank you to everybody who, to Mary and Franklin, who confirmed that you could hear me. All right. So back to our conversation about skills. So as a project manager, and before we go on to the other definitions of PM that we talked about, what are the top skills that you think somebody needs to have in order to be a good project manager, somebody who doesn't fail a lot?
Okay, so I'll start, and there are a lot for sure. I'll try to
But the
keep
ones that you
list.
think, if you don't have it, then don't even consider being, like, for instance, if you ask me, one of the things would be being an organized person, right? If you're not an organized person, then you're not going to be a good PM, in my opinion.
Okay.
And we may talk about that, I guess, in details.
Let me share my thoughts, right? For me, like, leadership and team building is really important. A manager should be a good leader. He should have an empathy to understand people's from where people are coming from. He should be able to build teams. Like, it's basically saying, right, leading the team versus like managing the team, right? So he should be able to lead the team in the right direction, and then provide a safe environment for everyone so that they can build. There is a trust building between the team members, and the trust building basically with him or her, right? So leadership and team building, I would say, definitely one. Next, I think negotiation skills are really important, because not only with your team, but when you are in, because as a project manager, we have to understand, we are not just managing the team. We are managing our executives outside. We are managing our clients. We are managing project scope. We are managing like broad stakeholders, right? So negotiation is definitely an important skill to have. If you are not able to negotiate in a right manner, you will bring scope every day home. Like, it's not going to work. Team is going to be stressed out. Communication, very important. It has been always important. In this new world, it's extremely important. As per PMI, 90% of time a project manager spends only on communication. And I can tell you from my experience, I'm only like most of the time I'm jumping from one meeting to other, or like talking to people, making sure things are happening. Right? Communication is another thing. And the other important thing I would definitely say is conflict management. Conflict management is also important because when you are leading these small like teams along with clients and stakeholders, there are conflicts that are happening. It's a nature of our work, right? People will have different opinions on the design or implementations, on the scope items, prioritization. Resolving those conflicts is also a role of a project manager, because if these conflicts keeps dragging, it will cause negative impact on the project. Right? Conflict management is another one. Definitely you need to be a good motivator. You need to keep team going, make sure you are able to influence them by your work, by your leadership style. People are learning from you. It's not one way thing, right? That you are just assigning them work and they are doing the work and you are moving out. Influencing is also important because people learn from their leaders, right? Similarly, like I learn from my boss, I learn from my colleagues. So a leader has to be an influential personality, I would say, for sure. Going back to your point, Arman, the organization, I really don't know like if that organization is like, when you say organized person, is it more of a from a planning perspective, or what are you thinking?
Yes. So I wanted that to also be related to the other aspects of the other definitions of PM. So that's why I mentioned it. So it's also interesting because you connected project management to team management. I think it really depends on the size of the organization as well. So if you're looking at a PM in, I don't know, a not super early startup, so let's say a team of 50 people, compared to a huge or like multinational organization such as where you're working, then the definition of PM might slightly be different, which is why I think there's a lot of conflict in the definition. So some people have the role of a team lead. They are also a PM. In terms of project management, they also are managing products because the company is building products. And then as soon as you grow, then these roles kind of try to have, you know, their own defined boundaries, right? And when I say organized, I meant more in terms of, let's say, a role similar to a Scrum Master, who is also, to some extent, is managing a project, but from a different angle, right? So that's why I mentioned organized, because I think in order to be able to make sure that the deadlines are met, you have to have an organized mind. You have to be able to know what are the deadlines, when you're going to deliver to what client or customer, and so on and so forth.
And that goes to the like following the right principles of project management to deliver the project, right? So if you follow the principles of project management, where you do like project goes through various phases, right? Initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, and control, and closing, right? So in the planning phase, as you mentioned, the organization piece automatically comes because you need to create those project plans, you need to create all these risk mitigation plans. And then in the execution phase, when you are basically going with these guides and you are executing this. So organization, definitely it's one of the good thing to have. It will definitely help someone to deliver the projects in a more efficient way. It will help him to understand what is coming their way so that they can plan their week and days ahead.
Great. So now going back into the other one, so product management and process management. Can you clarify a little bit from your own perspective and your experience? How would you define those, and are they complementary to project management? Are they part of the responsibilities of a project manager, or are they totally different roles?
Okay. In my opinion, they are different roles, and I will explain you why. Product management is basically a practice of strategically driving the business development, right? So as a product manager, you are responsible to identify what products are like are going to make a significant impact, are going to help our firm, are going to have the impact on people. If and then understand, like define those roadmap for those product, right? And then also think from, okay, how are we going to launch this product, right? From market launch perspective, market surveys perspective. So product management to me is completely different. Whereas now let's compare product management with project management. Product management is basically, as I mentioned, right? You are identifying how, what are the how I am going to deliver this product, right? What I am going to do to come up with this product. I'm going to do market surveys. I'm going to plan for market launch. I'm going to release my beta version. Then I'm going to incorporate customer feedback, enhance the product, again, like do things like that, right? And then create your product map. But product manager stops there. So basically, he or she has to now give this product vision to project manager. Project manager is the one who is going to take these requirements or these product vision statements, break it into the uh, small task and manage it so that we are delivering that product.
Mm-hmm.
So think of this way, right? Product manager is more of a strategic person, but project manager is more of a tactical individual who is actually planning and delivering things. Whereas product manager is there to help solve any product related questions. If team has, how do we implement this? Which features should be like kind of prioritized for implementation, things like that. So product manager is basically that person. So product management and project management, definitely two different areas to me.
Awesome. No, that definitely clarifies it for me. Now, from what I'm hearing from you, it seems like becoming a project manager means you have to have a lot of experience. Or, in other words, you can't just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm hearing from you and some other people, you can't graduate, let's say, out of college and become a project manager. Also, seems like in terms of the responsibilities of a project manager, um, I'm guessing that a lot of our audience members are going to be working with a project manager as opposed to being a project manager in near future, right? So confirm or reject that hypothesis. We can talk about that. But who's a good fit to become a project manager? For instance, like, do you transition into this role? Do you have to have some sort of an academic knowledge, like an MBA degree, or I don't know, for within the realm of software, do you have to have, I don't know, a few years of software development background, or I don't know, how, whatever that you think that is a requirement. And if that's not the case, how can I become a project manager in, let's say, 6 months?
So it's definitely an interesting question, I'm going to say there, because this it really depends, right? As you mentioned, like someone who's transitioning from college, can they become a good project manager? Absolutely, they can, right? But it really depends on what they are managing, right? If someone who has not done any IT work, who doesn't have any experience on IT, right? And if we are putting them in that spot, he or she will be mostly relying on team, right? So as I was saying earlier, project manager is the leader of the team, right? He or she will be guiding the team. He or she will be validating their work. So I will give you an example, right? If I graduate from college, I directly join the team. I have no experience on data science, for example. Now, if I have to deliver a project, I will be literally relying on my team to give me the estimates, right? So whatever estimates they are going to give, I'm just going to blindly like go carry forward with it. It can be right, it can be absolutely wrong. Whose neck is on fire? It will be me, right? So it really depends. I mean, going back to your question, Arman, it really depends on what role we are assigning that person. If it is more of a people management role, absolutely anybody can, like the person who has done MBA can become a great project manager. But if you're asking someone to, let's say, implement a hospital information system, right? it is going to be challenging for them. So depending on the uh, aspiration, I would say, a person has, if someone is thinking of becoming an IT executive leader, it would be ideal if they start like maybe as a project lead first, get their hands dirty a bit, get some experience, then move gradually into the into the project manager role and program manager and portfolio manager, things like that. So it's I would I would definitely say skill, like the academic skills are highly important because MBA schools prepare you for a lot of things, right? Especially on how to deal with people, how do we handle all the other soft qualities that I was mentioning earlier, leadership, team building, negotiation, conflict management, things like that. College will definitely help you on all those things. So you are already coming equipped with all those things. All you need is the actual experience on ground so that you can like help your team in a better way.
Hmm. And what makes somebody like myself, a candidate who is going to be working with a project manager, a successful team member from your perspective? What are you expecting in your team members in a project?
Okay. Uh, I would say a couple of things, right? A, definitely you are like self-organized. Work is given to you, a self-motivated individual. You are doing your job on time and communicating well, documenting things as it should be. And really, I mean, this is what I always tell my team, right? I hire like developers, not programmers, right? There is a difference in my mind. Programmer is someone you give them instructions, they will program it and give it to you. Developer is someone who's going to actually use their brain and say, no, this is wrong. I'm going to do it this way, right? So I always tell my team, I really need developers. I really don't need programmers because if I have to write algorithm and give it to you, it's better I do it myself because I will have more confidence on doing it. I really want you to take these requirements and convert into a solution and come to me with 5 things that what is missing.
Hmm.
So come to me with your perspective. Tell me if we are doing this, what are the risks? Raise those red flags with me. That is what I always like. I always admire people who are who have that mindset on my team.
And it seems like that mindset also prepares them to grow
Take
and eventually become a good project manager. Since you mentioned
exactly.
risk assessment is a big chunk of that, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Because they always see the big picture is what I always tell my team. Don't just focus on one task. How this is feeding into the project. If I'm telling you to just change the font of this screen, make sure like you're checking on the other screen the font is matching, right? Don't just finish this and move on, right? It may have an impact. It Changing this field may have an impact on the letters that are going to the client, right? It may impact over there. So think from that perspective, like have a broad mindset, look at the big picture, and that will eventually help you grow faster in the firm as well.
Mm. No, that's a great point. Um, so my next question for you, and I just wanted to reiterate for anybody who has joined us a bit later, if you have questions for Bunty, you could share those questions on the chat box on YouTube, and I'll make sure that I'll ask those questions, in due time. But my next question for you, and I know that you probably can't share a lot of details about the actual projects that you've been working on and delivering, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody understands that. But can you tell us a little bit about team structuring and resource utilization? How does it actually work in real life? Because a lot of
Okay.
people can talk about this in college or universities, and they could go ahead and read books and whatnot, but every time somebody goes into the real life scenario, we realize that things are different. I'm
Yeah.
expecting that it's the same case with project management as well, right? So can you tell us a little bit of maybe some of the challenges or some of the realities that, in retrospect, now that you're looking back, you were not
Mm-hmm.
expecting maybe 10 years ago?
Okay. So from team structure perspective, it is always like if you see the pyramid model, right? We always try to follow the pyramid model. We have like one lead supported by multiple hands-on people, right? So we try to have the same model. That's the goal always on the projects, because we want more hands-on work or more hands-on people rather than having too many leads managing the team. In my perspective, I always try to have at least like 5 developers managed by one lead. That's the minimum ratio I try to do. I don't want to stretch team also, like having 10 people or 20 people managed by one person. That also like overkills a lot of time, because then project lead is not able to help me. So I will have to do a lot of like the middle work, right? So I always try to have that balance. So what I try to do usually is from the team structure perspective, let's say if I'm working on a mobile app development project, right? So this mobile app is integrating with a legacy system and pulling data from that system and displaying it for users, right? Just a basics app. So what I try to do is I try to divide my team into pods. So I will have like front end pod, basically. I will have an integration pod, and I will have basically an analyst, like business analyst pod, and I will have like QA team pod, right? So that like there is no overlap between the roles, a, and then that way I can like people can focus on what is assigned to them. So, and that is what I have seen in most of the organization. Like they try to have different teams, like for either by module or by pod or by functionality. Sometimes they may merge, like in this scenario sometimes they may have like even a database team working with say for example under the front end team, right? It's absolutely fine, because we don't want one database administrator to be managed by one person, right? It is easy to fit in him or her in one team, maybe let it be integration or let it be the front end, and managed by the same individual. So that's the approach I always follow for team structuring. But again, it really depends on the size of the project. Sometimes if it is really simple project, wherein like if I have just 2 developers, one tester, one analyst, I can be playing dual role. I will be the project lead and project manager. So it really depends on the size of the project, scope, time, everything, like a budget on the project. So the project manager will have, when we are doing the estimations, we'll have to work around things. And sometimes we will have to have like part-time resources on the project. Like in this scenario that I said, I may not be able to do the play dual role as a project lead and project manager. So what I will have is like I will probably have someone who is covering me as a project lead for part-time, or I will take the full-time project lead role, and I will have a senior manager in the firm who will be playing the project manager role, and I will be the deputy PM and the project lead on the project.
And so I'm also guessing that in certain scenarios and situations, then there's somebody on the hands-on personnel who could also be given the opportunity to play those roles, right? If there's a
Yes.
shortage in terms of utilization of resources.
Yeah,
Go
that's a
ahead.
very good point. Yep, sorry to interrupt. That's a very good point. So in this example that I said earlier, right? So when I have like let's say 3 developers, one QA, and one analyst, probably in this scenario I will say, okay, you know what, analyst and QA will report to me. But out of those 3 developers, I have one senior developer and I have 2 junior developers. So I can have 2 junior developers report to senior developer, and then senior developer can report to me. So that way I don't have to manage 5 bodies. I will only manage like 3 people.
Makes sense.
So yeah.
And then if you have different pods, as you mentioned, so let's say team of developers, a team of analysts, and so on and so forth, then the communication happens between these team members happens through their leads, right? So there's some sort of a hierarchy that is being formed in the organization. Now, if you were to do this in a smaller organization, then you don't necessarily have all of those different people, right? So it will be more of a flat communication where your analyst might go and talk to your database developer, or your data engineer can go and talk to your machine learning engineer, and so on and so forth. Do you think that there is any major difference when you go from, let's say, a startup to a scale up to an established, mid-sized business and all the way to an enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of thinking about how you should manage these teams? Or is it basically very organically going to change as you see more and more people, you know, and then you form these hierarchies as you need? So is there any framework for that? Or do you go from, let's say, one developer to five developers, and then you realize, okay, so I need somebody to manage them? So let's say, Bunty, now you have more experience because you were with us since day one, and now you go ahead and manage this. And the reason I'm asking this question is, a couple of weeks ago we were having a chat with another friend of mine, Albert, who started a startup company, and
Mm-hmm.
now he's a CEO of that company. But initially, he was involved in development and in product management and everything else. And the question I asked him is, how do you grow a team, and how do you decide who's going to be reporting to whom? Um, and I wanted to hear your opinion on that front as well, whether or not there is a solution, some sort of a cheat sheet that everybody should follow, or is it very, again, organic?
Uh, I think answer is twofold. One is definitely like you need people who are willing to take responsibilities, right? You cannot just like give someone say, hey, you are the lead today, right? Even though like let's say if in the example that you gave earlier, right? I have five people and I'm like working well, but I'm not ready to take responsibility. So you can't just say that, okay, Bunty, from today you are the lead, right? It has to be like first of all, like individual has to be like motivated to take that role, right? That is utmost important. And then second, as you mentioned, right, it organically happens, right? So if someone has been with the firm, they understand, so they understand the processes already of what is being followed in the team, what they understand the environment, they understand the sentiments, then it makes sense to promote someone who is already with the firm, right? So that he or she can enforce that to the junior team members. If you are bringing someone new and putting someone on top, he or she is bringing learnings from other organizations which may not align with your like organization at all, right?
No, it makes total sense. Um, it also gave me another question. So there are some teams that are more or less comprised of independent contributors. So
Mm-hmm.
people who are not necessarily, based on the way that the roles are defined, and also based on or their own preferences, they don't necessarily want to, or are capable of managing other people.
Yep.
Do you have any recipe as to how you should prevent, let's say, 20 independent contributors all reporting to one person who is probably the VP of engineering or something like that? Is there a way to encourage independent contributors to become more of a senior or a manager role, or should you go ahead and, let's say, hire for somebody like that from outside your company?
Oh, it's an interesting question for sure. If someone is an independent contribute, it's it requires a lot of motivation for sure for them. I mean, the way I do it, right? So I'm managing a project. I have like three contractors. I don't even have like full-time employees. So the way I motivate them, like I manage them, I would say, is like I have like meetings all together. Like I have end up start meeting in the start of the day, assign them work, then I have meeting at the end of the day, assign them work, and I clearly lay out like if there are dependencies between their work, and I have to literally call it out like three times. Make sure that once you are done, you're informing X. Once you are done, you are informing Y. So, but you know what? It automatically changes, right? I will tell you an example. I will like so every project team when it is new, I'm thinking probably the example that you are giving, it's probably like a brand new team. It's not like a team who has been together for a long time, right? Every project goes through this phase, right? uh, Forming, norming, storming, performing, and adjourning, right? So forming is when we are bringing people together. They are just trying to get together, like work together. Then storming is when they have a lot of disputes, but then they have a lot of conflicts. They are not able to work together. But ultimately, we get into the um, performing and forming phase where people are working together, right? So maybe currently the example that you gave, they are still maybe in norming or storming phase. But once you have, like, you will, as a leader, you will have to put more time. Initially, as I was telling you, I was managing 3 contractors. I had to literally give them, like, spoon feed them instructions for 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, my life was easy because now these guys are talking to each other. They know, they understand dependencies, who is working on what. They understand the bigger picture. So they know what work they are contributing to, how it is impacting on the larger side. So giving bigger picture is always, I'm a big fan of that. I always try to give the bigger picture to the team. Even if we are working on, let's say, for just building the integration, I always give them the entire, like, solution walkthrough from front end till the back end, so that they know how their work is actually impacting. Which user is impacting? Is it impacting citizens? Is it impacting, like, frontline workers? Things like that, right? So once you associate people with the cause, give them that big picture, I think that that mindset changes.
Mm. Nice. No, that's a great point. Um, Look at that, time flies. We're almost 45 minutes in, and I still have a couple more questions for you. So I'll try and be brief with the other two questions. Um, so this comes from my own personal experience of working in consulting, both as an external independent consultant, as well as, back when I was also, we were sort of colleagues. And it's related to um, resource resource utilization in terms of human resources mainly, and forming the teams for different engagements. Do you think that a project manager should usually, if not always, focus and utilize the same core team members, or should they switch and swap? And I'm asking this because, again, looking at the real world, there's always somebody who is super senior, and they always trust 5 people, and then each one of those 5 people would lead 3 to 4 projects, and so on and so forth. So there's always the same core team members, unless they are utilized somewhere else or they decide to leave the company. This never changes, right?
Yes, I get it. Yeah. Once you
how do you
form
change
your
that
A
culture?
team, you carry it. Yeah. Once you form your A team, you like to work with them continuously, right?
Exactly. And then project
That's what happens
managers
most of the time.
go and fight to get those team members, even if there's an engagement that is happening 2 or 3 weeks from now. They would rather have their team, their A team, as you call, sit on the bench and wait for that engagement, as opposed to be staffed onto something else. Is this okay? And if it's not, how do you change that?
In my opinion, I'm not a big fan of that. I like to work with different individuals because it brings lot, like, new individuals bring lot of innovation. In my experience, I have seen. I have I was managing a large team. I was a maintenance and operations manager in US, and I was working with the same set of people. People get into a mindset of, okay, at this time I need to restart server, like, keep doing the same thing, like, manually. But when I brought in new people, they're like, hey, why are we doing this? Let's automate it. Let me write a script, right? So it really kills innovation, is in my opinion. If you are working with same team again and again and again, like, you are avoiding all those issues as we discussed, right? You're not running into the forming, storming, and all those issues. These guys are all well connected. They know each other. They know each other's capabilities, so they will work well. But in my opinion, you are killing the innovation, because unless these guys are, like, super smart, they are up to speed on every technology available in market, they can solve every problem for you. Well, that's a team, right? As I said. But if you don't have an A team, if you have same set of people and who are not keeping up to date with the market, but they are extremely smart on this work that you are doing, you will probably not take them to the next project, right? So the mind, I mean, if you really want to, going back to your question, right? How do we change it? I don't think a change is needed as long as if these guys are keeping up to them, uh, like up to the standards, they are up to the mark on the recent technologies, AI, everything. If they can talk anything, let it be from like legacy system mainframe to cloud and data science, whatnot. If they are really a team, I would love to work with them same time because I don't want to run into issues like building relationships and things like that, right? I will continue with them. But if I need a new team to bring new perspective, I will definitely bring new team members.
Great. We actually have a question from the audience. So I'll just read through it. Question is, how should we manage a program that involves a couple of projects within, as well as 4 to 5 different cross-functional teams? Which tools, for instance, software, would you suggest for this purpose? Is there anything that is, so if you go from one company to another, do you think that other than the framework, the way that you think about this, managing this whole program as was discussed in the question, do you think that there are solutions or products or software pieces that are universal and everybody uses, or is it more or less kind of the preference of the IT department was purchase some sort of a subscription?
I think it's more, sometimes it's a preference, right? Like what enterprise tools are available, people try to reuse those tools. Like for example, I have been on some clients, their preference is Jira. Some clients I have been, their preference was Bugzilla. Sometimes have like complete RPM and HPQC, different tools to manage things, right? So the one tool that has really worked out well for me for when I was implementing a program 2 years back, I was overseeing like large team, and we were basically like have cross-functional team, infrastructure, architecture, lot of different teams, and then we have clinical department, clinical teams, design, pharmacy teams, and things like that. We used Jira at that time. It really worked out well. It was not an agile project, so we didn't use Jira agile templates, but we used basically Jira like SDL's waterfall model templates, and it really worked out well because you can use, so in Jira there are like a lot of capabilities, like you can create your release plans, you can identify dependencies across programs or not programs but projects, and you can use those labels, you can notify people. It really worked out well. You can create those cross functional like reports. if if team X is behind on their schedule, you can actually tie those user stories or task in your reports and say why your story is not complete because you are waiting for project X to deliver this, right? So my personal experience with Jira has been really good.
So if I could also add something to that point, I'm also a huge fan of Atlassian generally. Everybody who's worked with me knows about the fact that, I mean, apart from Jira, I love Confluence for documentation and everything. But I also think that it really depends on, especially if you're working in consulting, it really depends on what your client is using. So I have seen Pivotal, Jira, Asana, Monday.com. I've actually seen Excel sheets. So I think the way that people are using these tools is important, not the tools themselves. What exactly you're trying to do. So you mentioned labels, right? So I mean, you could do the same thing with Excel to some extent, not 100%. Obviously, you can't have CI/CD in Excel, but you get my point. I think the mindset and the way that you are using these tools in order to operate and to make something into the reality of the program is really important. And then I've also seen in between these, as you mentioned, cross-functional teams, also different solutions that were being used. So again, a good example would be going from Jira to, I don't know, something else like
Yeah.
Asana, and then that would become a very big pain for the managers of those two projects that are supposed to be talking to one another and trying to maintain those dependencies and whatnot. Um, yeah, I think that's where my head is in terms of, the tools are just the tools, but if you
Yeah.
abstract them out and try to see what the tools are capable of doing, you could probably do that with a piece of paper and a pen as
Yeah.
well.
Configuring tool is definitely important. Like how, and then team is following those on a daily basis. It's really important
Yeah.
because if someone doesn't tag their project fine, right, someone assigns wrong release, it completely changes. Tool just gives you capabilities on pulling these cross-functional reports and things like that. It saves you, instead of like doing, I'm not going to support Excel. Instead of doing all this in Excel, it will take a lot of time from you. Tool will generate all these reports and give it to you. But again, configuring the tools in the right, using the right templates, team following is really going to be important in this scenario.
And that kind of reminded me of something else. So sometimes there's also like there are people on the other end of the spectrum. So they are highly dependent on tools. So there are like 50 different tools that they have to use on a daily basis. Otherwise, things, and that is that prevents people from being the best version of themselves. They're not really like, this is something that we used to call it busy work. So you're always basically doing busy work. You're always trying to maintain and manage and organize, as opposed to actually pushing something into production. So that's also the other extreme end of the spectrum.
Yep.
Since you mentioned Excel is not your preference, I just want to say you could have
Yeah,
also
the
50 tools.
processes, whatever processes we are setting up for managing projects, program, portfolios, right? It has to be nimble.
Yeah.
It cannot take a lot of time to go from the people. Tools are designed to make your life simple. If it is complicating it, it's not a right tool for sure.
Agreed. I cannot agree more with that. So we only have a couple more minutes, and I only have one more question for you. Can you? Is there any story that you could share with us? Some maybe about the one of the biggest challenges that you've had as a project manager. Something that when you think about that specific engagement, or a team or whatever, so a stakeholder, something that you basically is a good example of learning from mistakes, something that you look back in retrospect, you say, okay, I definitely learned something from this was one of my biggest challenges, and I will never make that mistake again.
Yep, I can definitely talk to that. So I'll give you an example without mentioning any names. But one of the project, I did one mistake. Like when I accepted the role, I accepted the team. So what I meant by that is, I accepted the team without interviewing those people. I understood the project. I needed like these 6 type of niche skills, right? But the team was already there. I took over the team. And when I started working with the team, one biggest challenge that I had was the people who were interviewed were not right fit, all of them, right? So that, like, don't do that mistake. If you are signing up for that to deliver some critical work, make sure that you are talking to the team. You make sure that you have a right team to deliver the project. Otherwise, it is going to be not present situation. You will be accountable to deliver work. You will not have right resources. You will end up like spending nights and days to fix things, which problem could have been solved like if you would have like been little proactive before signing up for this. You could have interviewed the team, or you could have just said, okay, you know what, let me talk to the team, and raising those, you could have raised those flags before accepting the position. That one project, definitely I still regret in my life. Like I didn't interview the team. I accepted, I started, and literally every 2 months I was rolling off one person. I spent so much time with the team and finding the right people. It was not pleasant, right? And then when you are in front of clients, it also like doesn't give a good impression, right? If your team member is not able to answer all the questions, and you are being called all the time that, hey, can you join this meeting, we are not getting our input from this person, can you help us? You can't be everywhere, you can't do 6 people's job. So yeah, just make sure that you have a right team to deliver things.
Makes sense. All right. So, no, I think that's a story that we have to talk about it in more details in a separate call, you and me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are almost at the mark of the hour. I just wanted to thank you for the time that you took to, to talk to me. I also wanted to thank everybody who listened in. As always, we have other episodes that are coming up. Please, be in touch with us on LinkedIn. If you follow our page, you are going to know about all the upcoming events. This is a weekly thing, that's why it's called Weekly Supervised. But usually it happens on Fridays, except next week. So next week, we are having our conversation on Thursday, same time, 2:30 Eastern. And it is going to be about software engineering practices and standards in machine learning. So it's going to be a very deep technical conversation with another great friend of mine, Ray Fan. So we are really hoping that you could also join next Thursday, and then after that again, hopefully every Friday again. And then be in touch with us, follow our LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There are, apart from this week's conversation, there are 4 other almost 1 hour videos on very nice topics, including how you should run a startup and how you should think about your NLP solutions and whatnot. I really encourage you, if you haven't watched them, please go ahead and do that and stay in touch with us until next week. And Bunty, thanks again. I really hope that we could have you again at some point in the future to talk about another topic.
Thank you for the opportunity, Arman. Thank you for joining, everyone.
It was a pleasure, and thanks again, and have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.